I know it may not be a lot of people's taste, but I like buying used equipment and bringing it back to life. I just bought this broken Celestron 130 SLT off eBay for a fraction of the price because it was marked as dead broken, won't power on. So I paid the money. It showed up actually really quick and I unboxed it, and here's a video of me doing that. And sure enough, when it flipped the power switch, nothing happened, even though I put batteries in it. But I then plugged in my battery pack to it, and sure enough, it came to life. There was nothing wrong with it. And the reason that I did this was I wanted to put together a telescope package for my friend Jake. And so this video is now turning into, or it's changing from how do you diagnose a broken telescope and fix it, to something that is probably more useful to my friend Jake and probably useful to everyone who's just about to unwrap one of these or just did unwrap one of these for the holidays. And that's going to be, you stare at this box and you think to yourself, cool, now what do I do? Hi everyone, I'm Francisco and this is Deep Sky Labs. Welcome. I try and learn in public so that you don't have to burn clear nights just trying to stumble through some of these beginner things, or get trolled on the forums because you asked a question that somebody thought you should have known the answer to already. And today I'm sort of making this video for my friend Jake, but also for everyone that just got a Celestron SLT 130 or really any of the Nexstar line of telescopes. The interface should be pretty similar as far as the mount goes. So we're gonna go from you just opened the box and pulled everything out to taking a look at a planet. Tonight the planet that's probably best visible is going to be Saturn. So here's what we're going to cover in this video. Power options for your Nexstar telescope, which ended up being the solution to this telescope that I thought was broken. Some basic telescope lingo, things like what is an OTA, which part is the mount, stuff like that. Eyepieces and Barlows and what the numbers mean on them, your first power on, and some hand controller tips and tricks, setting it up outside, and then all the way through to slewing to Saturn and how do you observe something like a planet, what happens when you're actually looking at it. We'll also dive in maybe a little bit at the end to some of the cool things you can do with a telescope that aren't just really, really basic beginner things. So grab your SLT telescope, grab something warm to drink, and let's get started with talking about power options. All right, first up is power, because if the mount doesn't turn on, then nothing else really matters. The 130 SLT, the SLT mount, can run off AA batteries, which if you pull the cover off the mount where the batteries go, you'll see two packs that look like this. Each pack can hold 4 AA batteries, and then they connect with what looks like 9-volt connectors. Don't connect 9-volt batteries to this. It's not the right thing. These definitely work, but they don't last very long. They don't like operating in cold environments. And when the voltage starts dipping down a little bit because it's cold, the telescope will start doing really weird stuff. Like sometimes it'll even turn off or it won't track correctly. So for Jake and for you too, I highly recommend some sort of external battery pack. This is a pretty simple device. It's a bunch of small cells inside. It's got an on-off switch, a little light that tells you how much battery is left. But importantly, it's got this port here that you can use the cables that come with the battery, which just look like this, to connect to the 12-volt port that's on the side of the mount. I'll put some links in the description to the 12-volt battery box that I'm using with this scope. It's a nice, all-in-one option, so you don't have to DIY a battery bank or anything. That will be an affiliate link, and I do get a little bit of revenue when you buy things through that link, but it doesn't actually cost you anything. All right, before we go outside tonight, let's decode a couple of words that you're going to hear me say a lot. A telescope like the SLT 130 is really 3 separate parts. There's the tripod, which is just the legs at the bottom, and then this plate on the top that attaches to what you would call the mount. This is the mount. This attaches to the tripod with this bottom part and then attaches to the optical tube assembly, or OTA, up here. And we'll show you when we get outside how to set everything up. SLT, like the other SLTs in the series, is what's called an Alt-as GoTo mount, which just means, Alt-as just means it moves up, down, left, right, and then GoTo means it has motors and a computer in it that will try and get it to be able to point to things at the night sky and track them as well. The big advantage of a powered mount like this is once it's aligned, one, it'll slew to things for you, and slewing just means moving, but it'll move to things for you, and it'll accurately track the night sky. That if you look at the stars, they don't necessarily look like they're moving, but if you look long enough, they do move across the night sky. It's not the stars that are moving. The Earth is spinning. So objects will sort of drift through the night sky, and if you're using a manual mount that doesn't have motors or anything like that, the object you're looking at, like let's say you get it on target, will drift out of the eyepiece in anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. But this mount slowly moves to follow the object. So Saturn, which is what we're going after tonight, will just sit there in the middle of your eyepiece instead of constantly sliding out of view and then you having to make these micro adjustments. This tube here is the optical tube assembly, or OTA. On the 130 SLT, it is a 130 millimeter Newtonian reflector. So you take this cover off here and you can look down into it, and you can see there's a big old mirror in the back. That mirror is 130 millimeters. That's where the 130 comes from. And it bounces light up to the front to this secondary mirror. There we go. To the secondary mirror here. The secondary mirror's job is to then bounce that light to the eyepiece that lives here, and that's how you see things. That's how you get to view whatever it is you're viewing. So the light comes in through here, bounces off the bottom, bounces off that secondary mirror, and then goes into your eyepiece. Now, you'll notice that the mirrors have adjustment screws. There's adjustment screws there on the bottom, those big silver ones. And then on the secondary up here, there's these small little screws. The reason that there's screws there is sometimes you have to do what's called collimation. And we'll hit that in a minute. We'll talk about collimation a little bit more in the next part of this video. But if you just bought this brand new, you probably don't have to worry about collimation. And then up here, this right here, is your red dot finder. This is what you use to aim the telescope at things for alignment usually. So it's essentially, this is like a zero power magnification telescope. So it gives you a really wide field and a red dot. During the day, before you take your telescope out at night, you should align this finder to the scope. So you can set it up and point it at like a light pole or a tree off in the distance. Make sure to keep this pointed away from the sun. You don't want any of this pointed at the sun because you can really hurt yourself and hurt the telescope, but most importantly, you could hurt yourself. And then you'll use these little adjustment screws here and here to make the red dot on your finder match what you're looking at in your eyepiece. So the center of what you can see in your eyepiece should be where your red dot is. You can do this with a star at night, but it can be a little bit tricky to do. And then here is the focuser. Now this focuser is a fairly simple rack and pinion focuser, and you put your eyepieces here at the end and you turn this knob to move the eyepiece in and out. That's all it does. Its job is to move this so that the two focal points of the eyepiece and the telescope line up perfectly and you can see what you're looking at. Most of the time when you're adjusting this, you want to make really small adjustments. There is a knob here at the top that adjusts how much friction there is in the focuser. So if it's loose, it's really easy to turn this knob. If it's tight, it's a lot harder to move the focus knob. Play with that a little bit and figure out what your preference is there. This is the cover of the SLT 130. It just clicks on to the top. What you'll notice is there's these two weird things here. When you're looking at the moon, the moon is super bright. If you don't have a lunar filter, which I'll include description or links in the description to lunar filters as well, you want to really limit the amount of light coming in, and you can do that with this by just pulling this cap off, and you'll see there's a small hole there now. So you're limiting the light to just what can come in here, and this thing over here is just meant to hold the cap while you're looking through this piece here. So this does not block light enough to look at the sun. Do not look at the sun through a setup like this. You need a specific solar filter. This is not going to block enough light to look at the sun. This is primarily for looking at the moon because the moon is so bright. And then when you're done, you can put this on here. Make sure to cover this up so dust doesn't get into your telescope. All right. When you unbox your SLT, you'll notice there'll be a couple small white boxes that have 2 eyepieces in them. This is what eyepieces look like. This one is 25 millimeters, and this one is 9 millimeters, and it will be printed on the side of them. And basically all eyepieces have a number printed on the side. A quick rule of thumb, the bigger the number, the lower the zoom, or the wider the field of view. So the big number one, the 25, is really good for helping you find targets, because if you're really zoomed in, you probably won't be able to find the target if it's not pointed perfectly. And the small number equals high power zoomed in, which is great once you're already on the target or if you're looking at something that's really small. There is some optical tricks you can play. This device here is called a Barlow lens. A Barlow lens multiplies the magnification of whatever eyepiece you're using. So this is a 2x Barlow. So if we put the 25 millimeter eyepiece into the 2x Barlow, it behaves like a 12.5 millimeter eyepiece. If you put the 9 millimeter in there, it'll act like a 4.5 millimeter eyepiece. Barlows can be fun, but just know that the more you zoom in, the dimmer the object will get, generally speaking. And the more you zoom in, the more likely you are to just see atmospheric disturbance. Like, you can make it bigger, but you might not make it sharper. So just some things to consider. Barlows can be fun, but they're not going to solve a lot of your other problems. For tonight, we're going after Saturn. We'll start with that low power eyepiece, especially during all the alignment routines that we're going to go through. And then once we get to Saturn, we're going to make sure Saturn's nice and centered. And then we'll pop in the high powered eyepiece here to get, once it's centered and focused, to get some really nice detail out of Saturn itself. And again, there'll be links in the description to some great beginner eyepieces and Barlows that work with scopes like this. Don't just put the 9 millimeter in there and start your night. Beginners often jump straight to maximum magnification of what they have, and then they think, oh, my telescope is broken because you can't find anything, you don't see anything. It's probably just not pointing at exactly the right thing. So start wide and then zoom in. To help with that, there are some companies that make what are called zoom eyepieces. So this one zooms from 24 millimeters to 8 millimeters by just rotating this collar here, and it actually lets you zoom in. Those can be really fun to use, and I usually keep one in my case because it can replace a couple different eyepieces. All right, a quick word on collimation. Because the SLT-130 is a Newtonian reflector, those mirrors can move over time. And when you hear collimation, it's just making sure that the primary mirror, the big one in the back, and the secondary mirror, the little one that's hanging in the front, are lined up correctly optically. If your scope is way out of collimation, the stars will look like comets or smears, and the planets will always be mushy no matter what you do. Like, you won't be able to get focus correctly. For this video, again, I'm assuming that your scope is either new or at least roughly collimated. If Saturn looks really funky later on when we have it out at night, then that's your cue to probably look up a dedicated collimation guide and spend a bit of time tuning it. Those collimation guides will probably refer to a unit like this. This is the LaserMate Deluxe from Orion, and what it does is it shoots a laser beam out, and that laser beam bounces all the way to the back mirror and all the way back up to this unit here, and then there'll be a little targeting system there, and you want to essentially make the dot line up go find a dedicated collimation video where they really dive into it if you can't seem to get good focus on stuff. And again, I'll have links to this as well, but go find a good collimation video. I'm sure one of the other YouTube channels has done one. This matters right now because I don't want you to spend your first clear night just chasing screws trying to collimate. Make sure there's something wrong first, then do the collimation. And it's sort of a matter of personal preference how often you'll do that. But tonight's goal is just get Saturn in the eyepiece and recognize the ring structure. Once we do that, hopefully it'll like really amp up your desire to do this in the future. And then you can get really nerdy about perfect collimation on night 2. You'll start with the tripod. Spread the legs out fully and get it roughly level. There's a little spirit level on the top. The bubble needs to be in the center circle. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be pretty close. With an Alt-Az, it is a little bit more important than it is with any other type of mount. Once you've got that, you attach the mount head to the tripod and just tighten it down so that it feels nice and solid. You'll sit it down and you'll spin this down here. There you go. And then you'll slide the optical tube assembly onto the dovetail clamp on the mount and snug it down. So you grab your telescope and slide this in here. You'll tighten that one nut on the bottom. It doesn't have to be super tight, but it shouldn't wiggle when you rotate it like this. It shouldn't wiggle. One last thing, if you haven't attached your tripod spreader, this goes here on the tripod and rotates to lock in. It just provides some extra stability. And then this piece here is your hand controller mount. So you'll put this in, you'll see this little tab here. The tab goes up and it just clips on to the leg. Once you're there, the next thing to do is probably to attach the red dot sight. This knob here that has the white dots, that's on, off, and brightness. And then these other 2 knobs are for alignment. So we'll put that on. It goes on from the back out like that. And then you just tighten this little screw nice and snug. And then you can go ahead and power it on if you'd like. Don't make it too bright. Let's pop in the lower piece, the lower magnification eyepiece, which is the 25. It'll be marked as 25. Pop the cover off, slide that in, tighten those 2 screws down. Now plug in your hand controller into the hand controller port. Let it sit in that little cradle right there. And plug in your power. If you've got AA batteries, put those in. If you're using a battery pack like this, plug that in into the power port. And make sure there's enough slack here so if this thing turns, it doesn't have a hard time, like it doesn't get caught. Make sure your battery pack is turned on and then flick on the power. You should see a red light there and you should see the screen turn on. It'll say verifying packages. Once it's done with that, it'll say Nexstar SLT, press enter to begin alignment. One quick controller tip, even right now before you're in alignment, you can move it left, right, up and down, and it will move the mount. If you want it to move faster or slower at any point on any screen, there's a motor speed button on the controller. You press that, and then you press either 1 through 9, 1 being the slowest, 9 being the fastest, and that can sometimes help you sort of move around faster if you're on screens. But you have to press motor speed, then press the number. And there you go. Just like the screen says, press enter to begin alignment. It'll ask you which alignment method you want to use. Because we're just going for Saturn and we can see Saturn, it's right there. We're just going to go to Solar System Align. So let's do Solar System Align. It'll ask you for your time, like your site. So you select, if you're in North America, Arizona, Phoenix. Just saying Phoenix if you're in a suburb is close enough. It doesn't have to be hyper accurate, although that does help. And then it asks you for the time in hours, minutes, seconds. It is asking for like 24-hour time. So it's 7:57. So I'm going to enter 19 1958 actually just changed, so we'll put 1958, press enter, and then select if you're in standard time or daylight savings. Again, that sort of depends on where you are. And then enter the date, so it's the 16th of November. And then select the object. Again, this is the planetary line, so it says, hey, select the object that you want to align me on. So we're going to select Saturn, press enter. Now, it starts off with this pretty fast slewing. Oh, the next thing to do, don't forget, take the cover off your telescope. That'll help. If you're looking down the eyepiece and you don't see anything, it might be because the cover's on. So when you're doing the alignment, you'll see it's like moving pretty fast. It might be pretty hard to get in alignment, but if you read what the screen's actually telling you, it's saying to center the object in the finder, in the red dot, because we're just sort of doing rough alignment. So I know Saturn's over there, so let me get on this side. With the red dot on, you can look through it and you can see your red dot. Don't make it too bright because it'll actually blow out your ability to see stars or planets behind it. So set it as dim as you can while still being able to see the red dot itself. So we're going to point. And then once you get it aligned in the red dot, you press enter. And now the screen will say, hey, use the direction buttons to center the object in your eyepiece. And because we have the lowest power eyepiece in there, hopefully it'll be somewhere in that field of view because we did our red dot alignment earlier. So I'm going to look through the eyepiece, and I've got telescopes in the way, but that's fine. And this is where we do the final sort of alignment. So, yep, we're pretty close. It's in the bottom right corner. Let me adjust focus so I can see. And what you'll notice is now when you press the arrows, it's moving really slowly. So you have to actually hold the arrows down for quite some time to get it to like move even, in this 25mm eyepiece. So hold it down for a little bit. You'll see it drift. Once you get it centered, then this time you press align. So last time you pressed enter, this time you press align. And it says that the align was a success. Obviously, we only pointed at one thing, but if that's what you're trying to do tonight, just look at Saturn, then you're good to go. The mount should start tracking the position of Saturn just while it's set up now. A couple little things that do kind of make life a little bit easier. Celestron makes a little plug-in GPS module that you can connect to scopes like this. It actually works with a lot of their scopes. And what that will do is in that beginning setup where you're typing in like the city, the time, and things like that, it'll automatically feed that location to the mount, which is more accurate and super handy, especially if you're going to take this thing camping and you don't know your exact latitude, longitude. Alternatively, you can open the app, like open a Maps app on your phone and get the latitude, longitude that way. I'll drop a affiliate link in the description down below. I do get a little bit of commission from that, but it doesn't cost you anything. So that is one of those helpful tools that Celestron sells. They do also sell what's called the StarSense Auto Alignment module, and it's actually a camera that takes the place of this red dot finder, and you literally just press auto align and it'll move the mount throughout the sky. It'll take pictures of the night sky and figure out exactly what it's pointing at. And with that and the GPS, it almost just becomes a one button setup, and that can be really helpful. Although learning the night sky is also a really good thing. If you do like the sky align and it fails, make sure your daylight savings time, your time, and your location is accurate, because if you do the star line where you just pointed at 3 bright stars and it fails, there's probably something wrong in that data set. So those are some tips for just getting it set up, and then eventually you'll just get a screen here that says next star SLT. It'll be blank, and if you want to look at solar system objects, there's a button for that, stars, deep sky, or the sky tour, which will tell you some of the nicest things that should be visible in the night sky for you, assuming it's clear. Okay, once you've got Saturn centered in at low power, refocus. To focus, you rotate the focus knob in and out, and you'll see it sort of snap into focus. If the viewing is steady, you can swap to the higher power eyepiece that the scope comes with, which is the 9mm, or something like a Barlow, which we talked about before. So a couple of tips to actually see detail on Saturn. Give your eyes some time. The longer you stare, the more detail that your brain will be able to pull out, like the Cassini division or the fainting band on the planet, or even some of the moons. Use gentle, slow focus. Planets are sensitive to very small focus changes. Don't chase max magnification. If the atmosphere is too wobbly, a medium eyepiece will show you more than a high power eyepiece, especially if the atmosphere is not too steady. But definitely try dropping in that higher eyepiece. And honestly, manage your expectations. It's not going to look like a Hubble wallpaper, but the first time you see that those rings are real and you see them with your own eyeballs, it, for a lot of people, is kind of life-changing. Okay, so you've made the mount work, you've aligned it, you've seen Saturn. What's next? You can slew over to other planets in the night sky if they're available. You can look at some globular clusters. Those are also probably going to be pretty achievable with something like this. But hardware-wise, you can hook it up to a computer. On the back of the hand controller is a mini USB port. And with the right cable and drivers, and I'll have links to all of that, you can control the scope from programs like Stellarium. At that point, you would just click on Saturn on your computer, it'll go there. You can also try things like planetary cameras, so you can replace the eyepiece here with a small USB planetary camera and capture short videos of Saturn. You can then stack the best frames. I've got a whole video linked here about how to do that. And in there we talk about the different techniques. You can use things like an ASIAIR, which is a small computer whose only job it is to move the mount and get your camera doing what it wants to do. This SLT-130 can absolutely be a stepping stone into astrophotography. If you want to see me try that with Jake's scope in the future, let me know down in the comments, and maybe we'll turn this into a mini-series, and I'll see if I can get him involved too. He's really excited to try this stuff out, and his birthday is in a week or so I'll be able to go deliver this to him in person, and hopefully we'll get some really good views of the planets together as a nice way to celebrate his birthday. And if you just unboxed your SLT and made it all the way to Saturn, congratulations. You are officially an amateur astronomer now. If this helped you get to first light, hit like so that other new telescope owners can actually find this content, and subscribe for more beginner-friendly experiments where we really try and cut through the hype. And make sure to drop your questions down below for Jake's new scope in the comments. I'll have links in the description and I think in the pinned comment for the 12-volt battery box that I'm using to keep this thing powered all night, some beginner-friendly eyepieces, Barlows, laser collimators, that Celestron GPS module we talked about, and the StarSense Auto Align add-on. Those will be affiliate links. They help support the channel if you use them at no cost to you. And if you want to support more tests and guides like this directly, you can always buy me a coffee at the link down below. It really does help me keep trying weird ideas, like let's rescue this broken eBay telescope that turned into a how do I show my friend Jake how to use it. Clear skies, and enjoy that first look at Saturn.